What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily, and in this video, we're going to be doing a comparison between the LG Stylo 6 and the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Lite. Now, both of these phones have actually been out for quite some time now, but I realized that I never really did a comparison between the two, and I think these devices are very much worthy of comparison, simply because they are two of the less expensive stylus-featured smartphones. And if you want a stylus with your device, but don't want to pay a four-figure price tag for the newest flagship Note 20 or Note 20 Ultra, these phones I think are very interesting options. And while they have been out for a number of months now, they are still technically current 2020 devices anyway. The Stylo 6 and Note 10 Lite are very different phones though, so I'll talk about what exactly separates them from one another. I'll go over some of the things that are the same, and hopefully by the end, this will help you decide if either of these stylus smartphones are right for you. First things first, let's talk about pricing and availability, since I think that's already going to be an important factor to consider. Right now, you can pick up an unlocked LG Stylo 6 on Amazon for around $300. That's a pretty good price, all things considered, but if you're in the US and are interested in jumping on some carrier deals, the Stylo 6 is also sold through Boost Mobile for around $220, T-Mobile for around $250, and Metro for $260. So there are some potential money-saving opportunities out there for this phone if you want to go with a specific carrier network. But in general, the Stylo 6 can be bought for $300 or less, no matter where you're looking. With the Note 10 Lite, this phone, when it was launched back in January, had a retail price of some $600 or more, which at that time was actually a good price when you compared it to the flagship Note 10 from last year. But now, more than 9 months later, prices have come down quite a bit, and you can snag a Note 10 Lite from places like Amazon for $450 or less. All in all, the Stylo 6 is going to be the cheaper device by likely $150 or more, which at these prices is a pretty significant difference in my opinion. And if you guys are interested in doing some comparison shopping of your own, I'll leave some links down below in the video description to where you can get these phones at their cheapest current prices. So be sure to check down there so you don't miss out on any good deals. Physically, I think it's pretty obvious that in a lot of ways, these phones are very different, but they do share a few important things which I want to touch on. Size-wise, the Stylo 6 is the bigger phone at 6.8 inches, while the Note 10 Lite comes in at 6.7 inches, and I don't want to understate just how large of a phone the Stylo 6 really is. It's one of the biggest devices you can buy just in general right now. It's very, very tall, and while the screen itself is larger, a lot of that sort of extra size also has to do with the thicker borders framing this phone. The Stylo 6 has much more prominent bezels all the way around, including a fairly large bottom chin and very obvious camera notch up front. And the Note 10 Lite, on the other hand, has a much higher screen-to-body ratio, Samsung's Infinity O camera cutout, and a much more modern and premium look, at least from the front. And I think with the Stylo 6, at least, that front display being framed by all those borders is something a lot of people may not like. Around back, interestingly enough, both of these phones have a plastic rear cover that's made to sort of mimic glass, and the finish is actually pretty close. You've got that same shiny white metallic finish that gives off a rainbow effect when it hits the light, and all in all, I think this gives both phones a very premium look. Personally, I actually think the LG Stylo 6 looks a little better this time, but both phones do look really good. And the sides and the frames of these phones are a polished metal. The Stylo has more of a blue tint, while the Note 10 Lite is a little shinier silver. And by the way, with this choice of build, neither phone has wireless charging or any waterproof rating, so keep that in mind as well. Taking a look around at everything else, on the left side, both phones have a SIM and SD card tray for expandable storage, and the Stylo 6 here also has the volume button and a dedicated assistant button. On the right, both phones have the power button, with the Note 10 Lite also having its volume buttons there. And down below, of course, both of these phones have their built-in styluses, as well as a headphone jack, USB-C port for charging, and the speaker setup. Around back, both of these devices have a triple lens camera setup, which I'll get into in a bit, but you'll also see that the Stylo 6 rocks that physical rear-mounted fingerprint sensor. With this, it's pretty fast and accurate, and obviously very easy to feel for, and personally, I'm still a fan of the good old physical sensor on the back. back, especially on these mid-range phones. With the Note 10 Lite, it actually offers the newer in-display fingerprint reader up front, and to be honest, it's fine, but I don't think it's as fast or as accurate as the Stylo 6's physical fingerprint sensor. Fortunately, the Note 10 Lite does also have Face Unlock, something the Stylo 6 does not offer, and that's what I would use more to quickly unlock the device. When it comes to the displays, aside from the size difference, there are some other factors to consider here. Like I mentioned, the Stylo 6 offers the larger 6.8-inch panel, but it's an IPS LCD screen with a resolution of 2460 by 1080, packing in about 395 pixels per inch. The Note 10 Lite, on the other hand, has a similar resolution at 2400 by 1080 with 394 pixels per inch at 6.7 inches, but its display is a Super AMOLED panel. And I think you should be able to tell pretty easily that the Note 10 Lite offers the brighter, bolder, more colorful viewing experience. When comparing LCD to AMOLED, everyone has their own thoughts and preferences, but to me, AMOLED is just the way to go, and Samsung offers such a nice screen for the money on these mid-range phones. In general, there's nothing wrong with the Stylo 6's display. It still looks good, and obviously you've got a ton of real estate to work with. It's maybe not as bright as it could be, but it's totally fine for what it is. Side by side though, I think most anyone would probably prefer the Note 10 Lite. Detail-wise, with resolution, everything's comparable like I said, but in the end, it's just that brighter, more colorful look that I think makes the Note 10 Lite the much better option. Okay, so let's now talk about the main feature with these phones, and that would be the stylus. To keep things simple, I'll just put it like this. The Note 10 Lite, for all intents and purposes, is a full-featured Samsung Note device. You get all the same stylus software and functions that you'd get if you bought the flagship Note 20, and that's pretty awesome. With the Stylo 6, this phone has a lot of stylus-related features of its own. LG did a nice job with this, but there are just a few things that I think bring it down a notch. First off, with the actual physical stylus, the one you get with the Note 10 Lite is a made-for-the-device sort of tool that's connected via Bluetooth and has some additional button and gesture controls that expand the list of stylus features. You can snap a selfie with it from a distance, wave it like a magic wand to do certain tasks. It is truly an extension of the phone and made specifically for the device. The stylus on the Stylo 6 is your basic metal pointer tool with a rubber tip. It's not connected to the phone at all. There's no buttons or gestures. It's just a simple little stick basically, and offers no additional features on its own besides when you actually interact physically with the phone. Both phones offer a wide array of stylus-related apps and tools, including notes, memos, screenwriting, coloring, draw chat, GIF capture, and more. And the stylus menu that pops up can be customized on both phones to include other stylus and non-stylus app shortcuts. But the Note 10 Lite just has a few more features and apps that specifically utilize the stylus. This is sort of what Samsung is known for on their Note devices, really offering a ton for the stylus. And while LG has done a nice job offering some decent features, it's still a little lacking. Now, if your main goal is to just use the stylus as an extension of your finger for navigating the device, writing out notes or memos, even drawing on the screen or coloring to pass the time, basic stuff like that, the Stylo 6 is going to be perfect. But if you really want to get the most out of the stylus as a true extension of the phone, if you want to incorporate it with more apps and more features, the Note 10 Lite simply offers more. And furthermore, since the actual physical stylus itself is made specifically for the Note 10 Lite, Samsung ensures that the drawing and writing experience is much more fluid. I think you can see that there's significantly less lag and latency when drawing and writing on the Note 10 Lite versus the Stylo 6. And furthermore, the stylus with the Note 10 Lite can also detect pressure. Since the Stylo 6's pointer tool is just a simple metal stick basically, you just don't get those little extras. All in all, this makes the writing and drawing experience on the Note 10 Lite better. It's simply just a more fluid and more accurate experience. Like I said though, if the goal is to just simply write out notes from time to time or have the stylus as a little extra when you need it, the Stylo 6 is a great phone for just that. It's one of the most affordable phones right now that does does offer an actual stylus with tons of stylus-related features and apps to utilize. However, for power users, for people wanting to get the most out of the stylus, the Note 10 Lite is obviously the phone for you. Like I said, you're getting a flagship Samsung Note experience with all the bells and whistles, nothing limited at all, for significantly less money in comparison. Realistically, the thing that does separate these phones more than anything else in my opinion are the internal specs that power them. The LG Stylo 6 packs the MediaTek Helio P35 chipset, just 3GB of RAM and 64GB of internal storage. The Note 10 Lite, on the other hand, is a much more powerful device with the Exynos 9810 and Mali G72 GPU, either 6 or 8 gigs of RAM, and 128GB of UFS 2.1 storage. Now, we can criticize Samsung's Exynos processors. Sure, it's not the best, but in comparison here, I think the difference is still night and day. The Stylo 6 is a fine phone for casual, everyday use, and while LG's Android 10 skin isn't the most aesthetically pleasing or even fluid setup out there, it's not bad all things considered. Definitely much improved from years past. The Note 10 Lite, on the other hand, has Samsung's latest One UI updates over Android 10, and it is an upper mid-range device with the specs to handle just about everything. Side by side, I think you can really see the difference, especially as we start to load more and more apps, and I think if performance is even of the slightest concern for you, the Note 10 Lite is the way to go. This, in my opinion, is what you're paying for more than anything else with the Note 10 Lite. It's a phone that can handle tons of apps, it can handle gaming, it can handle anything you throw at it really. And especially looking ahead, this is a phone that I think still has at least 2 or 3 more years of potential. The Stylo 6 is an okay phone, but it might have been underpowered when it was released, and now in late 2020, I think there are likely other devices on the market at a similar price that outperform it. In the end, it's gonna really depend on what exactly you need your phone to do, but if you have the extra cash to spend and you want the most capable phone that's a far better long-term investment, I do think the Note 10 Lite is the clear option in nearly every sense. With battery life as well, I also think the Note 10 Lite is the way to go. This phone packs a 4500 mAh capacity battery inside, while the Stylo 6 has a 4000 mAh battery. I realize that size isn't everything. There are plenty of other factors to consider, but in my experience with these phones, while both devices can last a full day, I've ended up with more juice using the Note 10 Lite, even with its more powerful specs and maybe less optimized Exynos processor. Finally, when it comes to the cameras, once again, I think this is where you're going to see a pretty big difference between these two phones. They both offer triple lens rear setups, but the Stylo 6 packs a 13 megapixel main lens, 5 megapixel ultra wide, and 5 megapixel depth sensor with just a 13 megapixel selfie camera up front, while the Note 10 Lite has a 12 megapixel main lens, 12 megapixel telephoto lens, and 12 megapixel ultra wide, paired with a much better 32 megapixel selfie lens. Feature-wise and capability-wise, the Note 10 Lite is the far better phone when it comes to pictures and videos. It can shoot in 4K, it has night mode, slow-mo, pro controls, and tons more features and functions than the Stylo 6. And in practice, with its much more powerful camera tech and more capable internal specs for image processing, the Note 10 Lite is going to produce a better shot. I do think the Stylo 6 is a good picture and video taker for the price. LG has greatly improved its camera tech, and I have no issues. But the Note 10 Lite actually takes its camera setup from the flagship Note 10 from last year. So in a way, you are comparing a flagship camera setup to a more budget or mid-range setup, and this difference is pretty obvious. So all in all, if you're wanting a phone specifically for a stylus, I really do think these are two great options. The Stylo 6 is a super popular and very affordable device for the masses, and I think especially if you snag a good carrier deal to get this phone under $250, you'll end up with a great device with plenty of stylus related features to utilize. However, if you have the extra money to spend and not only want the most capable stylus phone, but the more capable device in general with the specs and the screen and the cameras, the Note 10 Lite is is well worth the extra investment. It's a better buy right now looking ahead, and much more comparable to even the flagship Note 20 devices, honestly, and it's probably the best all-around value for a stylus phone right now in 2020. But what do you guys think? Which phone would you rather get? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Be sure to follow Tech Daily on Twitter and subscribe to the Tech Daily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.